Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Dominic, I'm the host of the Android Factory. In the last episode we talked about an AI tool called AMP. It's free when you get started, then you can kind of pay as you go. It's pretty cool, it's worth it. Definitely check out that video if you missed it. And in today's video we're just going to expand upon what we learned in that last one and talk a little bit about context in the realm of AI. So let me paint a picture in real life and then we can, translate that into the code base. So context, what do we actually mean by context? Definitely not Android context, but instead just basically normal people context, right? Rules in which you have in the back of your mind when making decisions. So let's take the real life example of being invited to a wedding. You know that a wedding is, a fancy event, but you don't necessarily know the exact dress code maybe. Right? You get the wedding invite and you see, okay, it's in the middle of September, it's at this location. You can make an assumption as to what, what clothes you'd be comfortable in, but maybe the bride and groom have a specific dress code they want you to follow. Maybe it's real fancy and they want you to do black tie. Maybe it's just pretty casual and as long as you got, long pants and a jacket on, you're totally fine. Right? But the point is until you have that context, until you have that additional information about what their dress code specifically is, you're kind of shooting in the dark. And unfortunately, when you do that, you might get it wrong, right? You might not come to the event with the proper clothing, or you may have misinterpreted the situation somehow and wish you wore something different, right? But if they spelled out exactly what they wanted you to wear or a specific dress code, you can narrow your choices down and you can make a better decision from that. The same thing can happen in AI. The same thing can happen with all of these tools, with these agents. When you just let them run free, when you don't give them as much guidance, sometimes they'll hit it out of the park, but oftentimes, more times than not, they'll kind of fall on their face. They'll sometimes start hallucinating things. They'll sometimes just start deviating into anti-patterns that you don't want to see, or they just don't necessarily do things how you would expect. So the concept of context here as it relates to AI is being able to provide that additional information, those guardrails, the specifics on what we want them to do or what we don't want them to do so that it outputs code that works for our code base. Hopefully that metaphor made a little bit of sense. Let's go ahead and jump right into the code base and see how this works. Anyway, enough talking. Thank you for making it this far. If you did, slap that like button, help me out here. And I'm going to go ahead and just get us into a session really quickly here with AMP. And as you'll notice here, you might have noticed this in the first video, we get some output immediately. So as this thing boots up, as every agent boots up, it looks for context. It knows what it wants to find. And so it detects, hey, we haven't found one. Do we want to create one for us for this code base? I'm going to go ahead and click yes. Wow, that happened instantaneously with just a Y, and it actually starts to generate this AGENT.md file for you based on the code base. Now, this code base is also extremely simple. It's basically file new project with one composable in it, but it's still going to read the code base and it's still going to come up with an AGENT.md file, and then we can edit it from there to kind of create the context that we want. We can see here in this terminal window, that everything is kind of being read and it is working. While this is going, let me know in the comments if you do like the terminal window over here on the left-hand pane, or if you'd prefer it to be, at this like bottom bar over here. I figured it's a little easier to read more this way, but you guys let me know. All right, and so we just let it do its thing here. It created the agent.md file, comprehensive Android project guidelines. No existing agent rule files were found, so I analyzed the code base structure directly. File covers build commands, architecture details, Kotlin composed conventions, based on the project's configuration. So we are just going to find this file right here. And yeah, this is, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's not a tremendous amount here that is super beneficial because again, this is just such a simple project that it's a little hard to do so. But one thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and edit this. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this content here because it kind of just seems a little redundant. But for instance, there is actually a little something here that is already starting to, gain a little bit of value. So it's telling inside of the code style and conventions, section to use remember with mutable state of for composed state. Sure, that's just like, normal best practices here, but it's nice that now every time this agent boots up, it's going to have this context, prefer compose over XML layouts, dependencies are managed via the libs.versions.toml. So you know what, like these couple sentences right here are actually pretty valuable, and these are the patterns that we want the agent to continue, to follow. We don't want them to kind of go against this or start undoing certain aspects of how we want things to be. So one thing that I'm going to go ahead and add in here is just a little blurb or a couple of pieces of information on, composables specifically, because if we take a look at our main activity, in the last episode, we asked it to create basically this counter row composable, but it never created a preview for it. It just kind of created it. And, going back to some best practices here, right? We do want to see previews for our composables. And so quite simply here, inside of just this markdown file, I went ahead and told it whenever creating or modifying composables, please ensure they have previews associated with them. So we're going to ask this AI agent to go ahead and kind of expand on this counter row composable. And my hope here is that with that context, it's going to also create the preview. And now we can kind of see how this all starts to work. One thing I'm going to do here, if I can remember the appropriate command here, Control D to exit. We're going to go ahead and kill that because, again, we want to pick up that context in this session. I don't actually know if it reads it when you create the context during it, but basically once you run amp no JetBrains or just amp, it will find the AGENT.md and consume all of this information in here, and then it will create the context that it has for its session. So I just wanted to kind of kill that session and restart it just to make sure that it has everything. So this is a pretty basic composable here. This is what actually happens, just plus and minus buttons to go ahead and add, basically modify to this counter. So one thing that I want to tell it is we're basically just going to add in, multiplier or multiplication and division buttons as well to kind of expand on the functionality a tiny bit. Okay, so as we can see here, I'm going to prompt it, can you expand the functionality of the counter row composable to also have multiplication and division buttons that would affect the counter variable accordingly when the user interacts with the buttons. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter here and just watch it do its thing. We'll see here that it is working. It's created some to-dos for it. It seems like it's gotten the information. We can see some edits coming in, and it gives us a little bit of the output here. So if we click over here and kind of re-highlight the main activity, we can go ahead and see that we added in a few buttons here to multiply them and divide them. I'm sure that would work. Yep, we even have it here checking for not equals 0 so that we don't crash. That looks good. However, it did not create the preview. All right, nothing like a live demo not working, but this is the power of AI that I like to do, or how I like to interact with AI. So once something has gone wrong here, I told it, I noticed you didn't create the preview for, or as the AGENT.md file instructs you to do. Can you please create the preview for the composable and explain to me why you didn't create the preview the first time? Am I incorrectly setting your context? So I'm going to let that run and then just talk about why I, kind of interact with the tool that way. I'm trying to ask it to, help me make it better, right? That's really what this is boiling down to, because especially with the question, am I not setting your context properly? This thing is going to emit a response that says, oh no, it did, and I just decided not to do it, or no, actually it would be better if you did something this way. And this is how you constantly evolve with the AI agent and, just make it better, make that accuracy, improve that accuracy over time, and then just speed you up as a developer. So we went ahead and added in the preview, and here we go. Why I missed it initially. I focused on your core request and overlooked the AGENT.md guideline about previews. Your context is set correctly. I simply didn't follow all the provided conventions. Thanks for catching this. Well, okay. So they're not going to take over anytime soon. But pretty amazing, right? That having just a normal conversation with this thing actually yielded, insight like that, right? I mean, this thing is talking to me like I'm its best friend, and here we go. Obviously, this isn't necessarily the most complicated preview, but now you can kind of get a view here of how things are going to look, perfect with this composable. So hopefully you learned a thing or two. Hopefully this agent decides to listen to me next time. Hopefully your agent decides to listen to you. But basically everything boils down to your AGENT.md or your different markdown files that you go ahead and create. Just to quickly bounce over here, we can see that the AGENT.md is at the root of the project here, and we can get into how to organize some of your more complicated projects or your more complicated context windows, as we continue with this project here or these demos and whatnot. So if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Appreciate you. Smack that like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.